Well, this is the fourth Sunday of Advent, which means Christmas is near, and perhaps you've discovered that ordered and controlled life that you expect and want has faded away. The expectations have come a little bit too much, pulling you in all kinds of different directions. If that's the case, then know that you might notice the baby being born in your lives, and you might begin to make a choice for new life. Ahaz is confronted with this choice. Ahaz is the king of Judah, which is the southern tribes, and he is, of course, a descendant of David, and he's a pretty good king. Everything rocks along pretty well for him until Assyria begins to flex her muscles out in the world. And what happens is that the northern tribes, Israel, which is called Israel at the time, along with Syria, make this kind of alliance against Assyria to protect themselves against Assyria, and they want Ahaz and Judah to join them. Ahaz refuses. Instead, Israel and Syria then threaten Ahaz. They're going to destroy Ahaz and Judah. And so Ahaz goes to Assyria and forms an alliance with them against Israel and Syria. Things get complicated pretty quickly, you see. And Isaiah finds out about this and comes in and says, "What in the cotton-picking name of God are you doing?" Now, he probably didn't use those words exactly, but he might have, because he's from the South, you know. What he's mad about, you see, is all these alliances that he's making. He's saying, you're not trusting in the covenant God has made with you, this covenant they made with David, that your reign will be forever. You're supposed to trust in that. So trust in it. I'll give you a sign, so he'll encourage you to trust in it. And Ahaz says, I don't want a sign. And he said, well, God will give you a sign anyway. And the sign is a baby will be born, and he will be called Emmanuel, God with us. What he's trying to say, you see, is to assure Ahaz that God is with him, and that if he'll just trust in God, all this stuff will pass, and it'll be okay. We don't know who this child is necessarily. We do know that Ahaz does not heed the advice of Isaiah. But Joseph, a descendant of David, does. Joseph, you see, is, by all accounts, an older man, and he is engaged to be married, betrothed to Mary, who is a teenager at the time. And I'm sure he has certain expectations about how life is going to go, you know, what's going to happen. But those go awry when he finds out that Mary's pregnant. And being an older and wiser man, he's pretty sure it wasn't him. So what does he do? Well, in those days, what you're supposed to do, this is what convention tells you, this is the way the society is structured, what you're supposed to do is to divorce this woman publicly. That way you save your honor. The man saves that honor of being a righteous person, you see. But it doesn't wear too well on Mary and the child. What would happen, you see, is that she would be disowned by her family, and the whole society would shun her, and likely they would die. Now, you think the 1950s were bad, think about this. Pretty bad. So what he does, he decides to dismiss her quietly, divorce her quietly. Now, what would happen there, you see, is that perhaps if it didn't get out, the family could keep her and take care of her and so forth, you see. And everything would be okay, perhaps, but perhaps not. But what happens before he makes that decision is that God comes to him in a dream. The messenger of God, which is what an angel is, a message comes to him in a dream saying it's all right to marry this woman because this child is born of the Holy Spirit. And you are to name him Jesus because he will save his people from their sins. Everything turns on Joseph's decision in Matthew. There's no receptivity of Mary in this book. That's in Luke. There's no Magnificat. That's in Luke. In Matthew, everything depends upon Joseph. If this child is going to be born a descendant of David, a son of David, it's up to Joseph to make that decision. And what happens is he chooses life. You see, what happens is all of this conventional wisdom about going with society's norms and doing what you're supposed to do is left brain stuff. It is calculative brain. It's how you gain your worth in your society is going along with convention. He decides not to. And he participates in what John Cobb, a theologian of the 20th century, says is a call forward, a call toward greater life together, a call towards not all the divisions that would happen, but something of bringing people together. And he chooses Mary and Joseph and gives them his name. He bears the embarrassment and shame of what had happened and brings a new life into being. And that life grows, and God's presence becomes more aware to us all, and life flourishes. Now, have you been in a situation like that? Most of us have, you know, where you're pulled in all kinds of different directions by the way things are supposed to be, and you don't know what you're going to do. Been there many times. If you're a clergy, you feel it in the atmosphere. It's all around. I remember one parish I went to, and my wife and I were moving into this parish, moving into our house, and a newspaper reporter came by and wanted to take a picture of us. I said, "Oh yeah, sure, that's fine." We were the new clergy in town, small town. So they took a picture of us as we were moving in, and the parish, the women in the parish began to complain because I wasn't wearing my collar, and my wife wasn't wearing a skirt. We were both in shorts. I mean, it was the summer and it was hot. But you see what was happening, the expectation. You've got to have this wonderful, this perfect image, you know, that you're presenting to the community. And there we were in our shorts, T-shirts. Our first parish was in a small town, Jacksonville, Arkansas. Small town, small parish. And I think it's stronger. This expectations are stronger in those kinds of towns. And I was young, and I was in my left brain, you know. Your left calculative brain trying to make myself worthy of these people and trying to meet the expectations of the people and so forth. You get caught in that. You get trapped in it, enslaved in it, you know. That's the way it is. My wife and I were in our den watching TV, and the doorbell rang. We went to the door, and it was a policeman. And he had our son Jack in tow. Jack had been with a bunch of other boys throwing rocks at street lights down the street. And we, of course, said, we will take care of this. Thank you, Mr. Policeman. And so the policeman left, and I lost it. I said, "What in the Sam Hill are you doing, young man?" And when I said young man, he knew he was in trouble. I said, "Don't you know that the neighbors would see this? Our parish would see it. I could get fired for something like this." I was trapped in my left brain. I was trapped in my calculative mind, the mind that wants to prove its worth, to be better than others, that's where all this convention comes about. All this stuff comes out from your left brain. And I first discovered that was not in the Bible, although it's there everywhere. It was from Barney Fife. Barney Fife on Andy Griffith. He was quoting what Andy had taught him. He said, when you're a lawman and you're dealing with people, you do a whole lot better if you go not so much by the book, but by the heart. And that's one of the things I've discovered over the years. And it's not a lawman, it's a priest, it's a human being. When you're dealing with people, you do a whole lot better going by the heart rather than by the head. You see, that's what Joseph did. Dreams come from the right brain. Our heart is touched by the right brain. Our soul, God, is in our right brain, not our left. It is in this compassion of the right brain that we begin to make decisions for life and not death. And Joseph makes those. He bears the embarrassment of being trapped in that left brain and the whole society being trapped in it and have all those expectations that you have, and he chooses life. And if you know, Jesus does the same thing. His whole life is that. He's always challenging the conventionality of the day. Anything that shuns people or excludes people or whatever, he bears that embarrassment and acts on their behalf, including them back into community, even to death on a cross. Even to death on a cross. And that cross calls us forward. It is a call toward relationship with each other, to choose that relationship over everything else, because that's what brings life.